Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I must admit that when I was preparing for the class and reading and sitting, I was like, oh my God, so many truth bombs there. It's kind of like it was kind of a heavy subject matter. It was wearing on me. But at the same time, I found it very heavy, but very liberating at the same time. And sometimes you'll find that in our philosophy, there's like heavy things being said, but at the same time, it's nice to hear it. It's nice to hear it. Nice dose of reality, nice dose of knowledge. And actually, that's what the word guru means. A spiritual master in Sanskrit. It's the term for that is a guru. We're all familiar what guru, the term means. Literally, it means heavy, because he's weighing with knowledge. He's heavy with knowledge. That's what a guru is. And so let's, without delay, we're going to read the first mantra. Anybody wants to volunteer to read it? Mantra 9.
I'll read it.
Okay, I'll just go ahead. Those who engage in the culture of nescient activities shall enter into the darkest region of ignorance. Worse still are those engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge. So those who are ignorant and who cultivate ignorance, they go somewhere dark, darkest regions. They enter the darkest regions. But there's even a darker place for those engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge. It's even worse. And so ignorance, as it says here, ignorance is dangerous, but even worse is misguided knowledge. When ignorance is presented as knowledge, when ignorance disguises itself as knowledge, that when it becomes very dangerous. And an ignorant person is just, he doesn't know. But a person who doesn't know and pretends to know, it can do even worse, Just like a person who doesn't know how to cure patients, then he just say, I'm ignorant, I don't know how to help you in this situation. I'm not a doctor. I won't help you. Worse is if a doctor, if not a doctor, if an ignorant person poses himself as a doctor, he can create more harm. Yeah. And that's the idea that everybody is, and Prabhupada criticized a lot modern society and modern education, and that actually they're not presenting knowledge, and that they're educating people, they're educating the mass of people, but actually they don't know. Actually, if we look at the whole process of science, there's actually no conclusive truth with science, but they present it as fact, they present it as reality, where in fact there's a lot of it is speculation. I mean, yes, there is some things that are in science that, it's reproducible, and you can do the chemical experiments and you have the results. But I'm saying science in the sense of all the theories about physics that they don't really have experiences, and like about the origins of the universe, stuff like that. That a lot goes in the realm of speculation, but they present it as fact. Like the Darwin theory of evolution, as if it's fact, but it's just a theory. and it's speculative. That's an example. It's big scientists, and they pose as very learned, but actually a lot of it's just guesswork. Yes, it could be very educated guesswork, but ultimately it's guesswork. It's based upon a bunch of speculation, but they present it as fact. So that's cheating, actually. And if we go back to the beginning of the Isopanisad, Prabhupada talks about the different defects, and one of them is propensity to cheat. So people, they're not very learned, but they pose as learned, in order to get some adoration or some motive. It's all based on sense gratification ultimately, and either subtle or gross sense gratification, but they all have some motive to cheat people to get some knowledge. To cheat people to get some adoration, and they cheat people by presenting like it as if they're learned. But actually, they're not really. And we can have so many examples of that. So worse than materialists are pseudo-spiritualists. So there's people that are hedonistic. The hedonists, I think it's the proper word. People who have hedonistic tendencies. Those are not familiar with that word, just in case. It's that their only goal in life is pleasure. We have a term for that in Sanskrit. It's called a muda, which means like an ass, like a donkey. Pretty much he's just working hard all day, but he's not very smart, doesn't know why he's working. And it's just to get some little pleasure. And the example of a muda is that he's working hard all day to get grass, where from his owner, who's making him work hard all day, where he can just have grass without working hard all day. Like he's dumb, So same thing, the materialist is just working for pleasure, but he's doing it in such an ignorant way, or he's not ultimately getting real pleasure, and there's so much misery surrounded just that pursuit of pleasure, So a lot of people, that's just their goal of life, is just to have some pleasure. But when we're talking about pleasure, actually, we're more specific, we're talking about sense gratification, pleasure that's related to the body. Either you see something nice, you hear something nice, you smell something nice, you taste something nice. It takes all its different types of forms. So those are hedonistic people. So those are bad, but worse than them. So those are materialists, And Prabhupada says in the purport that 99.9 of people are karmis, or they're just anchoring for sense gratification. Their only purpose in life is sense gratification. But worse than those people are those who are promoting that life and are encouraging that life and are educating people to keep going in that life. And sometimes they guise themselves as pseudo spiritualists, like they're gurus, they're like wellness gurus, and actually these gurus, they don't have, their goal is still sense gratification. They encourage people still in sense gratification. Either it's more subtle or more gross, but it's not ultimately for people's self-realization. And that's real knowledge means to cultivate a self-realization, realization of the spirit soul that's beyond the body, and working towards that realization and detaching oneself from sense gratification. So the goal of human civilization is self-realization, not sense gratification, the goal of human life. And so the real gurus, they encourage people to real self-realization, and the pseudo-gurus encourage sense gratification in the guise of something spiritual. And often people don't have a concept of what's spiritual or what's not. The real guru is meant to educate people on what's spiritual and what's not, and not to misguide them into whatever idea of spirituality is there to just get some profit. Like, I don't know if it's still going, but during Prabhupada's time, there was gurus who were charging for mantras, you know? So they heard the word before, like what a mantra is. You know, they had some vague idea of a mantra. So it's like, here, pay me and I'll give you a special mantra for you, you know? And he was making profit like that. And, you know, the mantra was probably something bogus. And I remember one devotee, I'll say the joke, but I'm not so good with phonetics, but it's like a phonetic joke. He was saying, yeah, gurus, they go around, they give this mantra. Repeat after me. I'm such a ooh. And then if you say it fast enough, I'm such a fool. I'm such a fool. So that's why he was giving that mantra to people. It's a joke. I don't think he was giving really the mantra, but it's the idea, you know? People get cheated in that way. And the main point is this distinction between the life of self-certification actually promotes atheism. And they kind of go together. Atheism and self-gratification, they go together. There's no God. So therefore, there's just this world. Let me just try to get as much pleasure as I can from this world. And what is my experience of this world is the senses. So let me just try to enjoy these senses, try to enjoy my body as much as possible. Whereas theism, or the idea of Ishavasham, of a God conscious life, is that God's the proprietor and everything is meant for his pleasure. And we should act for his pleasure and become his servant and think always of him. And whatever we do it for his pleasure. So developing that God consciousness. And then you have kind of like everything in between. You know, you have the atheism, there's no God. Let me just try to enjoy this world. And then let me have selfless service to God. You know, these are like the two opposites. And then you have, you know, some types of religion, sometimes are like in between, and a little bit of sense gratification, a little bit of spirituality, like that. But the guru is meant to know this self-realization and selfless service towards God and promote it, you know, and not encourage the other one. That's a real guru. But the problem is people don't know this. Like a guru doesn't know this part. You just know sense gratification, and he's just encouraging that in the guise of something spiritual. So selfless service towards God is knowledge, and developing that is knowledge, and going towards that is knowledge. Anything else is ignorance. Anything else that doesn't promote love and selfless service towards God is ignorance. Something might be used in order to help us towards that, then that's a component of knowledge. And that's the next mantra. But now this is just making the distinction that there is a distinction between knowledge and ignorance, and we have to be careful of not being misguided. And the Prabhupada gives the example that in education on a godless society, it's like a decoration on a dead body. You know, what's the use of a decoration on the dead body? It's useless. You know, it's like it doesn't. No, the person, like, is the person's dead. He's not enjoying the decoration. You know, ultimately, like in India, they do that sometimes. It's kind of a way to honor a person, you know. So the dead body is there and they decorate it and then they burn it. So the point is that it's useless because it's just meant to be burned. You know, it's a very temporary, yeah, maybe it honors the person or something, but it's very temporary. You know, it doesn't have a long-term use. So education of a godless people actually does no good. Ultimately, it does no good. And it's just a bandage solution. Right? There's so many problems in the world, but they're not going to the root of the problem. Prabhupada says, nobody's talking about the real problems of life: birth, death, old age, and disease. These are the real problems of life. Who can solve this? Who can solve these problems? Birth, death, old age, and disease. Well, Krishna gives the guarantee that he can. So, okay, we have some faith, we follow Krishna, and our goal is to get rid of these things, get rid of this cycle of birth and death. And especially when you hear Prabhupada say it, it's like, yeah, he's like convinced, like, yeah, those are the real problems. I gotta get free from them. That's a guru. He's telling us these are the real problems. Let's get rid of them. Not everything else is just band-aid solution. No, people are trying to come up, a guru who's telling you otherwise, he's just giving you some it's okay, because people are suffering. People are the result of sense gratification. Yes, there's pleasure, but could come with it. There's also displeasure. There's also pain that comes with it. We can talk about all the problems of the world. We all know there's lots of problems in the world because the whole world is based upon sense gratification. That's what we're trying to do in this world. We're all trying to enjoy our senses, but the result is that we're all suffering ultimately. And we're all in this illusion that somebody's got it right somewhere, or if I just have this or I just have that, I'll be happy. So the pseudo-spiritualist, the pseudo-guru comes and says, oh yeah, your sense gratification is not doing well. Well, I'll tell you how to better gratify your senses. Maybe he doesn't use those words, but the idea is like, but he doesn't give the real solution of a transcendental solution, getting out of this material world by serving Krishna. And it just gives a banded solution, where the real solution is getting out of this world, getting out of the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. This will come to everybody. No matter how much you've got it figured out in your life and how successful you are, you'll still grow old and you still grow disease. And that's the illusion that they have, the modern scientists, that one day we'll find a cure for death. They don't even understand life, how they can find a cure for death. Huh? They haven't even found a solution, the formula of life. Prabhupada said, these are all post-dated checks. I'll pay you later. Here's a post-dated check. I'll pay you later. So that's what they're saying, is that, later on, we'll prove this right. We'll prove this right. We have all these theories about life and death, but we have no proof, but we'll prove it later. We'll prove it later. They're not even proving it in their own methods of knowledge. Anyways, so education that does not lead to spiritual realization is not real education. And that's the part of that. So we can give so many examples of people who misuse the Vedas, because ultimately the goal of the Vedas is to realize Krishna. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Vedista Sarvam Viva Vidya, Vedantikrid Eva Vid Veda Chaham, that the goal of the Vedas is to know Krishna. But in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also talks about Veda Vadaratas. And who are these Veda Vadaratas? Is that they're attached, they think they know the Vedas and they're attached to it, but actually they just use the knowledge of the Vedas to misdirect. They distract people from Krishna. They will use the Vedas, but they won't give Krishna. They won't give self-realization as the ultimate goal. And they'll just give heavenly pleasures, or this is the real goal of self-realization. It's, this is the real goal of the Vedas. It's just to gratify your senses. So let's use the Vedas to better gratify our senses. So this, again, it's misdirecting. Whereas you have a animal to get out of this material world, but you're not using it properly. So that's the idea there. And they misdirect people. Yeah, and some people will use the Bhagavad Gita and they'll just misinterpret it. They'll just give their own spin on it. When Krishna says, surrender unto me, because Krishna uses those words in the Sanskrit, aham sarvasya prabhavo, Like he says, I am the source of everything, or he says, Savandaman Parichaja, Mami comes Saranam Vraja, like surrender unto me. Like he uses these words, Krishna uses it, surrender unto me, or I am the source. And then they interpret this. When Krishna says I, he's actually talking about this self within, and like they give all these extra meanings where it's clear, black on white. Krishna says, I am the source of everything. Or Krishna says, surrender unto me. You know, we're not talking about somebody else, you know. It's clear as day, but they have to misinterpret. They give some meaning to it. And then people come to these people and they're like, oh, you can teach us the Bhagavad Gita. But they're just misdirecting people, because Bhagavad Gita has, you know, it has credentials. The Bhagavad Gita, it's known as a spiritual book, because when it comes to the Parampara system, people get so much knowledge from it, but they use that and give their own spin, their own interpretation, because it's a popular spiritual book. Yes, I am. Sorry. I'm getting a little bit too enthusiastic and speaking a little bit loud. And another one that Prabhupada talks about is the Maya Parita Jnanas. Maya Parita Jnana means one whose knowledge is stolen by illusion. So they don't really have knowledge, it's just a bunch of illusionary thing. And Prabhupada talks about self-made gods. You know, I'm God, you're God, we're all God, but we just forgot about it. And the goal of life is just to remember that we're all God. Well, if you are God, then why are we covered by illusion? Like, does that mean that illusion is greater than God? Doesn't make sense. No, we are part and partial of God. We're from God, but we're not God. And there's like, and actually there is a bunch of gurus out there that they actually say they're God. Like, they might develop some sort of mystic powers, because through practice of yoga, some people can develop some mystic powers, and they just misguide people, especially in India. People like those cheap gods. So those people are doing worse. They're doing more damage than the simple materialist that's there, because they're messing with people's spiritual life. You know, something like a spiritual life, or a concept of the purpose of life for somebody, is like very close and dear to the heart. It's like you're dealing with something that's should be very precious. Maybe it's not very precious for most people, or they're not focusing on it. But for any spiritualist, they understand that like your spiritual life is the topmost thing, and then you get misdirected for that. That's a very sad thing. Any comments or questions on this verse? Yeah.
Just on that last point.
Jay.
Oh, yeah, just on that last point, you were just saying how the verse, it says how these people that misguide people, they actually have a worse destination, because if you put yourself in a position of responsibility, you actually there's more karma involved if you do the wrong thing, if others are depending on you. So to be in a position of guidance or responsibility, you have to be even more careful and more careful. You have to be sure that you're doing. You have to be sure that you're doing the right thing.
But like even in the justice system, if a person has a responsible post in society, he gets heavy penalty because of his responsibility. Like, he doesn't fulfill his responsibility, or he misuses his responsibility, then he gets penalized also, like in the legal system. Like a person who has like a judge, for example, who misuses his power as a judge, then he'll have like more the responsibility, the heavier the consequences. The same thing if a person poses as a, so yeah, awesome. Thank you for that. It is a heavy responsibility. Jade?
I was just thinking, like, there's a lot of gurus who are touting manifestation, how you can, make your spirit board and put everything on it that you want to have come to you.
Yeah,
But that's it, it's such a materialistic thing, just
yeah,
expecting all this stuff to come to you. And I sometimes think that people get misguided knowledge because they're being a little bit lazy. Like, it's hard work to be on the
yeah.
path, and maybe people don't always want to put in all the work.
Exactly. And Prabhupada actually says that it's the cheater and the cheated. Huh?
Yeah.
There's cheaters out there because people want to be cheated. Mm.
Yeah.
And okay, I want something cheap. Okay, that's fine. I've got it. Um, Great point. And also, you remember there's an example I wanted to use that I forgot to use, but your example of the goals to attain the division path or whatever. What's the word you use? Like the. I mean, it's a nice thing to do also for your goal in life, but sometimes they do it in
The
a weird way.
manifestation.
Yeah, your manifestations, like pray to the universe is going to manifest, or you made it happen. There was I was hearing this example. My brother was telling me this example that an evangelist was there. He was saying, "You want that BMW? Well, you pray to Jesus for that BMW." It's like encouraging people like that. Well, I mean, it's a step. It's a step in the right direction. It's like, okay, there's full atheism, and then there's like selfless service to God. So in between, there's like asking God for your material needs. It's a step in the right direction, but presenting that as the ultimate goal, well, it's not. And that's always like also, I know that's a big question there, is that what's the difference between encouraging people according to where they're at, but at the same time bring them towards a higher standard. It's like we can see that like sometimes in Krishna consciousness, selfless service to God, that's the highest standard, like Krishna prema, highest standard. And sometimes people have a hard time for that. So okay, like do this step and do that step towards that. So that's always like a fine line. Like, are you just encouraging people on their nonsense, or are you actually trying to bring people up? I think the point for that, sorry, I kind of went on this tangent here, but I think the point for that is that as long as, like, Prabhupada was very good with that, because he, like, you read his book and it's like the highest standard is like there. It's like, oh my God, like it's heavy, and it's like, wow, it's a high standard there. But at the same time, when you saw in his personal dealings with his disciples, he was very encouraging to help them come to that standard. It's not that he's encouraging people on their nonsense, but there's a difference between understanding people where they're from and where they have to go. So yeah, sorry for that tangent there, but I don't know why made you think of that. Yes.
No, I don't think it's a tangent. Like, in terms of this section of the Isopanisad, these 3 mantras we're dealing with right now, they speak about the cultivation of knowledge. So for people who are attracted to cultivating knowledge, this is not like what you're talking about. This isn't people who are attracted to knowledge in itself. This is not pure devotion. Pure devotion, the highest standard of spiritual life, is devoid of all attraction to other things. It's simply for the pleasure of the Supreme. That's the pure devotion. But we do have different attractions. We have either attraction to knowledge, or we have attraction to doing certain activities or getting certain results. So the Bhagavad Gita and the Isopanisad, they're teaching, okay, you have an attraction to knowledge, to cultivating knowledge, then just cultivate the right knowledge. Cultivate knowledge about who you are, who God is, what the material, cultivate the proper knowledge. So it's okay to have these attractions or these desires for activity, knowledge, these different things, but direct it, put it in the right direction.
Thank you for mentioning that. Also, yeah, one thing I forgot to mention, you know, made me think of that, is that we should, like, it's a section, mantra 9, 10, 11, they're actually together. It's about the cultivation of knowledge. And then mantras 12, 13, and 14, if you look at the Sanskrit, it's pretty much verbatim of the previous 3 mantras, except like mantra 9 and mantra 12 is pretty much verbatim, and mantra 10 and 13 and mantra 11 and 14, they're verbatim, except there's one word that changes, and it's not talking about knowledge anymore, but it's talking about worshiping the Supreme. But we can use that same idea that, okay, you want to cultivate knowledge, great. You want to cultivate worship, and worship the right thing. Cultivate the right knowledge and also worship the right thing. The cultivation of worship, of religion. Yes, and also this idea of going back to the first verse of quota. You know, that's also part of spiritual life, and that actually comes to the next mantra here. Is the gradual process of knowledge is a big part of it, is knowing where we're from and where we're situated. Humility is the first one. So I'll jump into mantra 10, spend like 10 minutes on it. There's a lot to be said, again, on each of these, there's a lot to be said. I'm gonna quickly go through it. And then at the end, in 10 minutes, I would like to read a list that Prabhupada mentions in the purport there. There's 18 items of knowledge. And then we can have a short discussion, ending with a short discussion on like which one jumps the most to our participants here. So mantra 10, the wise have explained. I'll stop screaming because my wife can hear me from the room here. The wise have explained that one result is derived from the culture of knowledge, and that the different result is obtained from the culture of nescience. I'll say it one more time. The wise have explained that one result is derived from the culture of knowledge, that a different result is obtained from the culture of nescience. It all depends on what you're cultivating. And so again, there's the 18 items which form gradual knowledge. Actually, the 18, they're qualities. If you look into it, and actually this list is there in the Bhagavad Gita, and actually what are this list is of qualities. So pretty much developing these qualities will help you live knowledge, to have knowledge in your life. You know, it's just like a nice example of, I use this example in the sense of receiving Krishna's love, or it can be used in the same way of like receiving Krishna's mercy or his love, but it could also be used in the same way as receiving knowledge. Is that if, like, for example, if I have this, you know, it's a nice little cup, I drink it, it's great. It has holes at the bottom. If it's full of holes, then no matter how much I pour into it, you know, I won't retain anything. So if we don't have certain qualities, knowledge, even if it's important to us, it won't retain. You know, or if mercy is given to us, it will have not much effect because we can't contain it. You know. So we'll discuss that, and then also the point is that to acquire real knowledge, one approach a spiritual master, one was not disturbed by ritual illusion. So a lot of our education, I mean, I'm the thick of it myself, I'm a teacher. A lot of it is, I'm a high school teacher. A lot of it is, yes, we do talk sometimes about qualities, and that's great. But a lot of it is information or even skills. It is like, it is a part of, people do have to have skills, but like one person said at one point, he said, I have so much education, but I just learned how to do stuff. I didn't know anything about life, despite all my education. You know, but when I came to Christian consciousness, I really got like some real knowledge. It made sense. Like, again, all the information or all the skills we have are just like zeros. But then you put Christian on front of it and start having values. Just having a bunch of zeros compiled to each other just equals zero. But you have to put a 1 in front of them, and then they'll all have value, zero. So learning all these things that we have in modern education, skills and stuff like that, it's worth nothing unless we give proper purpose of life and we have Krishna in our life. Prabhupada talks a little bit about the state of the world and how in universities, the students are unsubmissive. Yeah? And then science, like if the highest advancement of science, who uses that? Yes, we can say, oh, people say science is great because it will help us cure stuff, and it's advancements in medicine, you know. Yes, there's the knowledge to that, but it's kind of like, it kind of seems as much good as the science does, is as much bad or even worse it does, you know. It's like the highest advancement of science, who's using it? The military. Advancement in robotics, it's going to be the military, the first ones on it. You know, they have drones, they did the atomic bomb. Now they have drones, now they can bomb you very precisely. You know, it's like, we know that they use science, because what the science ultimately does, it gives us more control over the world. So they use that control to bomb each other. Such a wonderful advancement. That's the pinnacle of modern education, how to bomb each other better. Well, it kind of sounds reductive, but it is kind of true. It's pretty much true. It's very true. And then Prabhupada talks about all these ideas of nationalism, you know, and that's what we do. We do it like, there's all these undisputed borders, and people have wars over these undisputed borders. Like now in India, in Pakistan, they have like a tract of land that nobody really wants or cares about, like Kashmir. Like, it's not fertile land, or just some reason to fight, like these ideas of nationalism. And it's like the natives, they didn't have the concept of like a country before. It's like, it's when the Europeans came, it's like, okay, this is now our country, and this is the limitations of our country. And like before that, they were like, no, it's just everybody's land, or it's like, you take what you need. They lived a lot with the principles of Ishavasham. You can say it's like, this is our quota, that's your quota. All this idea of national profits and all the money that's being spent on military for just the national pride. There was a story one time about I think the French were insulted by the Germans for like the royalty was insulted for a minor thing, and they went over there all proud, and like they waged war on them, and they came back defeated. They're not proud anymore. I don't know exactly the history of that, but it's just like to show that just for nationalistic pride that they went on war. It's kind of ridiculous. That's one thing in the life of devotees, that actually deep down, a devotee, he doesn't get into politics. Like we might have an idea of how we want society to be, but ultimately, I mean, I do vote, mainly, but I don't really care. Ultimately, I don't trust anyone. Anyways, don't want to get there, but like political ideas, thinking that a politician will save your life, it's another misguided guru, that a politician will make the world better. I'm sorry. So a devotee doesn't have nationalistic ideas. I mean, I'm happy to live in Canada, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of nice things happening there, but like, you try to get away from that mentality of like of nationalism. Like I don't understand how people can fight for their country. Like I just can't understand that. I sorry, it just out of nationalistic pride. Like you'll go and invade another country and go in the military. I mean, some people are Kshatriya-likes and they need to be like that. And it's just like, it's a very hard thing to understand that, you know, it's so proud of your country, you go kill people for that. Sorry. So the idea is that we learn from Adira. Adira, it means like a sober person. He's not intoxicated with the material illusion. He's not intoxicated with sense gratification. He's not mad after sense gratification. You know, and Prabhupada said, like, he uses the best use of a bad bargain. I guess we are in the material world. Huh? So, and actually, if you look, Prabhupada talks a lot about submissiveness. How about in university, the students is not submissive. He's just giving a headache to his elders. But that a person who wants real knowledge, he submissively accepts it from a dhira, from a sober person. It's knowledge that's coming down from one who knows, you know, and you just have to receive it submissively. Whereas, you know, the scientists are unsubmissive. They don't want to accept knowledge that comes from above. I mean, they kind of do. They have their own parampara in one sense. But parampara means a disciplic succession. But this idea that from nothing you can develop knowledge, no, the knowledge is there from Krishna. He knows everything. No, the knowledge comes down to us. That you start from an ignorant person. That's okay. You're ignorant. I'm ignorant. We're all ignorant, and let's figure things out together. You know, let's, especially, I mean, that could happen maybe like while trial and error. You know, you can learn some things trial and error. But the ultimate purpose of life, can you get that from trial and error? Like, would any of us would come to the conclusion, like now we accept these conclusions, we accepted, you know, or at least to some degree we hear it from Prabhupada, it's like it makes sense and we're accepting them. But if we hadn't heard these things, would we be able to come up with ourselves? Like we would be able to come up with these ideas ourselves? You know, it's because people know, you know, it's like this, the thing with an ignorant person is that he doesn't know what he's like what he should know. Like he doesn't know, this sounds weird to say, he doesn't know what he needs to know. You know, whereas when we receive knowledge from like it opens our eyes. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master gave me the torchlight of knowledge by which I'm able to see. If you're just in darkness, you see nothing, you know, but you need to open the light to see. And then you start seeing things. Oh yeah, I didn't know that was there. I didn't know that was there. I didn't know that was there. It's the same thing. The Dhira, the spiritual master, gives us that knowledge. And he gives us a process. And what is that process? Let's read about that process. So I'm going to read the 18 items. This is again in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, text 8 to 12. Krishna just gives a list of qualities, but Prabhupada kind of elaborates on these qualities by having these 18 points. So one should become a perfect gentleman. Oh, sorry, before I say that, so hear them, and then we'll discuss, okay, which one you found most pertinent, or which one struck you the most. One should become a perfect gentleman and learn to give proper respect to others. Actually, Krishna, for example, Krishna says it's humility. That's how he names it. Krishna says humility in the Bhagavad Gita, but so Prabhupada elaborates like that. So the next one, he says religiosity, Krishna says, but then Prabhupada elaborates on that. It says, okay, 2, one should not pose himself as a religiousness simply for name and fame. 3, one should not become a source of anxiety to others by the action of his body, by the thoughts of his mind, or by his words. That's nonviolence. 4, one should learn forbearance even in the face of provocation from others, tolerance. 5, one should learn to avoid duplicity in his dealings with others, simplicity, like simplicity of behavior. 6, one should search out a bona fide spiritual master who can lead him gradually to the stage of spiritual realization. And one must submit himself to such a spiritual master, render him service, and ask relevant questions. 7, in order to approach the platform of self-realization, one must follow the directive principles and join in the revealed scriptures. 8, one must be fixed in the tenets of the revealed scriptures. 9, one should completely refrain from practices which are detrimental to the interests of self-realization. 10, one should not accept more than he requires for the maintenance of the body. 11, one should not falsely identify himself with the gross material body, nor should one consider those who are related to his body to be his own. 12, one should always remember that as long as he has a material body, he must face the miseries of repeated birth, old age, disease, and death. There is no use in making plans to get rid of these miseries of the material body. The best course is to find out the means by which one can regain his spiritual identity. 13, one should not be attached to more than the necessities of life required for spiritual advancement. 14, one should not be more attached to wife, children, and home than the revealed scriptures ordain. 15, one should not be happy or distressed over desirables and undesirables, knowing that such feelings are just created by the mind. 16, one should become an unalloyed devotee of the personality of God, Sri Krishna, and serve him with rapt attention. 17, one should develop a liking for residence in a secluded place, like Sharanagati, with a calm and quiet atmosphere favorable for spiritual culture. And one should place where non-devotees congregate. 18, one should become a spiritualist or a philosopher and conduct research into spiritual knowledge, recognizing that spiritual knowledge is permanent, whereas that spiritual knowledge is permanent, whereas material knowledge ends with the death of the body. These items combine to form a gradual process by which real knowledge can be developed. You have those qualities, you can develop real knowledge. I mean, like any of these, like we can give a whole seminar, a weekend seminar, and even more, like a month seminar on each of these qualities. It's like a lifetime of cultivation of knowledge here. So, anyone that struck most? Now it's time to share. It's kind of part of your homework. There's a question in your homework that's like that. So I'm kind of like helping you in your homework here. So which one stuck out the most?
Number 9.
Wait. One should completely refrain from practice which are detrimental to interest and self-realization. Oh my God. I didn't want to speak about that one. Tell me.
That's the daily struggle, to not do the things you're not supposed to do.
Yeah. Well, each one of them is like, the one right after, one should not accept more than he requires for the maintenance of the bus. Like, did I need to eat that extra bowl of cereal? I'm not sure. Mike, you want to share?
Yeah, number 7 really stood out for me, just because of the whole process we're learning right now on exactly what Jade said, right? On learning the things that we have to avoid is a good way to actually start on how to avoid them, I guess, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, and then also too, just in ways that we can interact with the material nature, but still do it in the right way, right? And doing it in the correct way and still keeping, you know, in a Krishna conscious way, you know. And then 18 also really stuck out to me. And I think it deals with a lot of overall what we were talking about in both these mantras, just because of the, you know, wasting our time. Like one thing that really I was thinking about when you guys kept talking about the education of the wrong way, like a godless education, is like, you know, you're thinking about things like, you know, you were talking about quantum physics and the unknowable, how it's all like speculative. Like they talk about dark matter. People don't really know anything. It's just all like, you know, this is what we think it could be. And, you know, when you go down this route of misknowledge, it ends up with things like, you know, the atom bomb. You know, it's like it's all done in the thought of knowledge and who knows, energy or whatever. And then, you know, when Oppenheimer actually exploded the thing, he's sitting there quoting the Bhagavad Gita. It's like, if you'd only learned this in the proper aspects, you wouldn't have gone down this road to begin with all along, right? So it just right in that whole process, you can see how if you get the mistaken knowledge, how terrible things can go, right? So yeah, both of those, like 18 was a huge one just for, you know, the process of, I think too, of, you know, hopefully halting this constant cycle, right? If we can concentrate on the spiritual knowledge instead of the material knowledge that is just transitory, really, right? Like hopefully we can help this process come to an end for all of us, maybe bring all society into a more conscious place, right? So
Well,
yeah,
that's the goal.
exactly.
But 1% at a time. Brihat?
There's a few in there that I really like, but what stood out to me actually, I was reading through it today, and I was like, this is, and it says it at the end of the commentary here, and also in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that these 18 things I consider to be knowledge, and whatever is beyond this, I consider to be ignorance. And so you know, you can read it and be like, oh, 18 things, oh my gosh, you know, like I'm reading this whole book and now these 18 things, and like, how do I remember all this? But I was thinking, it's only 18 things. If you can just figure out these 18 things, this is knowledge, you know, and everything else is, you know, everything else will fall into place. So it's of course what you're saying is true, that each of them can be an extensive study in themselves, but at the same time, it's only 18 of them. So I thought that's what stood out to me, is like, you can just focus the rest of your life. You could focus on these 18 things, and you know, you'd be good.
And I want to say 2 comments. I mean, I'm still working on the first one. We should become a perfect gentleman and learn to give proper respect to others. Still working on that one. Like sometimes, I'll use this example, like it's a gradual process. Prabhupada, he says himself, you know, from a gradual process. It's nice that you beat each other up and like, yeah, I should do better, I know. I'm not saying that to be to encourage you towards laziness, but at the same time, like, you know, see the progress you've done. You know, we like to, like, for example, I'm doing that with my backyard. It's like I'm cleaning. There's so much, like I have 5 acres and I'm cleaning. It's like every time I look at it, it's like, there's so much to do. There's so much to do. And I get discouraged. Whereas if I start looking, oh, well, I accomplished this today, you know, there's this much progress I've done. So, you know, yes, we have to look at what needs to be done and not be lazy. But at the same time, like, okay, well, you know, like celebrate without being proud, but celebrate what you've accomplished. That's also something important to be done. And also, okay, and one thing is that one might look, at first I was like saying, well, you know, it's a gradual, it's like, okay, I have to perfect number one, then I have to perfect number two, then I have to perfect number three. But it's like Khan Academy, like I use this, it's a program where I teach mathematics. And but they show you the world of math, and like these are the different concepts of math. Like there's multiplications, there's algebra, there's geometry, and it's like it shows you your progress. Okay, you're at like 50, you know 50% of geometry, you know 20% of algebra, like you've completed this much. So I think I kind of see these like that also. It's like there's 18 items, but you might be more advanced on this one, little advanced more on all of them. Little bit, but there's some that are more, I won't say important than others, but like just focusing on Krishna and having rapid attention with him, that's a powerful method to develop these other ones, you know, or like just being humble also. It comes and affects the other ones also. If you're humble, then you'll be able to accept a spiritual master. You'll be able to do all these things. So sometimes when you focus on one, it also comes and helps the others. Yeah. If you're tolerant, then it's be able to be more humble also. You know, it's kind of like we can all off each other. Yes, we had. Yeah, you're right. It is, the time is over.
I was yeah.
But please, your last comment.
That's okay. That's okay.
No, please say it, your last comment.
No, it's good.
I want to hear it.
It's all good.
Please. Oh, please. I insist.
That's the thing, is I'm not sure if I remember what I was going to say. So.
well, you're giving class next week, so if you remember, you can lead with that if you wish. So thank you so much. Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Haribol.
Everything is perfect and complete. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Oh, I stop here. Okay.